They agreed to hear an argument, but they kept pushing it off, until control became the only thing that mattered. Backlash by Stephen Meehan. Lithe Man opened the door to the triumvirate's office and stepped inside. He studied Caitlin and Quinn. With a smirk, he allowed the heavy door to slam shut. The thud shattered the silent room, making the two triumvirs jump in their seats. They looked up at the man with dirty blonde hair as he claimed his desk.
"Good morning, Olyver,"
Caitlin said as he claimed his desk seat. Olyver gave Caitlin a slight dip of his head.
"Good morning, Caitlin. I hope you too are doing well."
"What do you want?"
Quinn asked as he shoved papers aside.
"To bring the two of you to task."
Caitlin slammed her hands onto her desk as she shot to her feet.
"You're out of line."
A whistle echoed through the office as Quinn stared at Caitlin. She stopped talking as she returned to her seat. Quinn's gaze drifted to Olyver.
"The triumvirate agreed that the conversations you're seeking are best served by open discussion."
That was the agreement my predecessor made.
Olyver folded his arms across his chest.
"We searched for an appropriate time to hold these discussions. However, finding time for those talks has been difficult,"
Quinn said. Olyver lifted a finger, keeping Quinn from continuing. After a few moments, he lowered his hand and spoke with clarity.
"Quinn, you both outmaneuvered Malark with ease. He lacked the aptitude for a life embroiled in politics."
"We're trying to lead our people back to the stars,"
Caitlin said with a sigh.
"We were not trying to outmaneuver your predecessor."
Olyver eyed Caitlin, studying her for a moment.
"Your intentions don't matter. What you've done is to keep us from moving forward. If we wait for consensus before designing, we guarantee a death by paralysis. If we begin design now, we give that consensus something real to react to."
"We do understand that,"
Quinn said.
"Before we colonize another world, we need the laws to govern them determined and codified,"
Olyver said, as if Quinn hadn't interrupted him. Caitlin let her eyes flit to Quinn, and she saw his slight nod. She took a deep breath and folded her hands in her lap.
"We know that as well, Olyver. But the scope of these conversations required us to shift the discussion to a forum to allow our citizens an opportunity to voice their opinions."
"A delay tactic,"
Olyver said, with grace despite the nascent snarl.
"One the population is growing tired of dealing with."
Caitlin's mouth parted for a moment before she snapped her lips shut. Her eyes lingered on Olyver for a second before shifting to Quinn.
"And what would you suggest, Olyver?"
Quinn asked as he lifted a pen from his desk.
"For the three of us to have the very discussion you promised my predecessor and his constituents. However, I want more than a debate. I expect to derive a list of requirements for the ships, so that our engineers can start designing them. Also, we will draft the required legislation to guide our fledgling federation."
Caitlin's eyes scrunched as she leaned forward.
"Both require input."
But Olyver lifted his hand, silencing her.
"We don't have the luxury of pretending this is procedural, my dear. If you do, you'll find the outcome less favorable than you expect."
"Olyver Gresser, you are a triumvir, not a thug,"
Quinn said as he pulled himself up to his full height. A similar snarl to Olyver's slipped through Quinn's lips. Several seconds later, he inclined his head.
"You do well to remember that."
Olyver smiled and tipped his head to Quinn.
"I apologize for the apparent crassness of my words."
"Apparent?"
Caitlin asked as Quinn rounded his desk.
They defined crass.
With another inclination of his head, Olyver smiled, though it never reached his eyes.
"If our citizens discovered your intentional delay, they would want to remove you from this position of responsibility."
Olyver examined the room, lingering on each object lining the walls. There were simple images, but also there were things of priceless beauty.
"I mean, you two seem to have grown accustomed to a certain level of comfort."
Quinn paced over to Olyver's desk with measured steps, stopping just short of it.
"The trappings here were brought by Malark. He cared for the material things any governing body can appropriate."
"Yet they're still here."
Olyver leaned back with a devious grin. Quinn rested his hands on the edge of Olyver's desk, leaning forward to close the distance without intruding.
Caitlin and I have done more to stabilize our world than anyone else. The trappings you mentioned are being picked up and redistributed in 3 days.
Oliver's gaze lingered for a heartbeat. Quinn rubbed his chin.
If you mistake restraint for weakness again, you'll discover how expensive such a wild assumption can be.
Olyver focused on Quinn for another moment, then gave a measured nod. Quinn returned to his desk.
With our posturing complete, we can schedule the open forum to determine the requirements for the ships we have to design before handing them over to our engineers, and then we can discuss the legal framework.
Olyver reached up, adjusting his tie.
It's best to do that prior to having the more inclusive conversation.
Caitlin shook her head.
No, we cannot. This decision requires us to allow every citizen to voice their concerns and desires.
No, Caitlin,
Quinn said, as he sat on the edge of his desk.
We'll bring the draft to the discussion, where we'll get their input. By the time they become codified, we'll have nothing but compromises. No one will be happy.
Then why fight me?
Olyver asked, his knuckles whitening.
Because doing this now emphasizes the illusion of hearing everyone's voice.
Quinn replied as he stood and returned to his chair.
Excuse me?
Olyver asked as the fire of his rage dwindled.
Government is nothing but the illusion. We just need to present the right one,
Quinn said as he resumed working on his papers. With that, our story concludes. I hope you've enjoyed today's reprieve from your daily grind. If you like the vibe, hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because every bit helps get this channel spread to those who require a momentary chance to unwind. I'll see you for the next tale, my friends. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. But why not keep the rhythm going? Pick one of the videos on screen and settle in for another moment of escape. And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe and tap the bell to get notified when new tales drop.